Juice. Booyah. Hello.
I think they can hear you.
All right. Knuckles. What a week.
What a fucking week, man. Both good and bad this week.
Why? Well, we're going to talk about it on the show.
Right, that's what we do. This is supposed to be the lively pre-show banter.
It is?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry this isn't lively. I don't feel lively. Let me just say that. I am so beat up right now.
Yeah, man. It's this week has been like
the days don't end.
I've been up and down and all around.
And God forbid,
I got some very good news this week, and I got some some other stuff.
It's all very exciting, and we better get to it.
Let's do it because of work and phone calls and shit. Here we go.
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Natx.
I'm Mike, or Mark, depending on where you've encountered me recently.
You didn't have to do that.
Well, I just want to remind them that I'm the same person, just split in two.
And boy, do we have a show for you. Today on RMA, the back-to-school train has left the station and predictably chaos ensues. And Erin Moore joins us for another edition of Get Smart with Erin Moore as we discuss sponsorship and the 13th step. Ooh, today on a very special edition of RMA.
Yay. Oh, wait.
And welcome back to the show.
May I?
You may.
Okay.
Go on.
So you may have noticed, Nat, that we've picked up a few listeners over the last week.
Yes, welcome to everyone.
Apparently appearing on This Naked Mind, it leads to an increased number of downloads. I mean, Annie Grace is quite the recovery kingmaker, if you will.
Yeah, check her out if you haven't already. It seems like everyone else in the world, globally, too.
Yeah. So I want to welcome all of you folks that found us through This Naked Mind or listened to my interview with Annie, which was so crazy because that was recorded back in like March.
Yeah,
and I had more or less forgotten about it until I got an email saying, hey, it's going to be up this week. And I did not expect the storm that came after it. I got a lot of people reached out to me to talk about the interview. And
it was really cool.
It was really interesting. And thanks for those of you that have stuck around and joined the Facebook group and, listened to the podcast and have expressed some really positive things about it. Joining the Facebook group is a great way to get in touch with us. You can also visit us at middleagesrecovery.com. You can listen to the show there. You can buy merchandise. We have some really cool T-shirts.
Yeah, buy some T-shirts. I'm wearing one right now.
Yes, help support your friendly neighborhood podcast with the purchase of merchandise.
Yeah, I wore this to the bus stop this morning, and I'm thinking, and there's like a lot of people at our bus stop this year,
right?
And it very clearly says Recovery in the Middle Ages podcast.
Right.
I am an alcoholic. Look at me. Don't you think I'm a scumbag? That's what it said. So I'm thinking, I walk out there like, I don't care, who knows, and I'm going to be cool.
Yeah, that lasted as long as you got to the corner.
I can't tell you, I crossed my arms. I'm like, which one of them is going to notice and be like, what is that?
Well, but we don't want our listeners to be ashamed to wear our merchandise.
No, but I did want to communicate my anxiety over, my identity as an alcoholic.
Most people don't look at the shirt.
No, that's what I figured. Nobody cares.
It's weird enough, Recovery in the Middle Ages, like they're not going to ask you about it. Yeah. Not at the bus stop. The only thing they want to know at the bus stop is what time the bus comes.
Yeah.
You can also find our podcast, although I probably don't need to be telling you people since you're listening to it right now, on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, all of the usual places.
Yeah, we're everywhere. The website, too. You could just listen straight from the website.
You can. We'll get a download also.
Yep.
It counts to our numbers. And speaking of numbers, you should go to the website, write us a review. Go to the Apple Podcast thing and write us a review there. 5 stars are appreciated because it helps us climb ever higher in the rankings of recovery podcasts, where we can, if we end up on the front page, think of the number of people that we as a community can help recover from drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, we're already
addiction.
popping up there. If you search like drug recovery addiction podcast, like we're up there with the big boys.
I want to be the number one search term for recovery.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Good luck.
Yeah. Who has that now?
Nobody.
You know?
I don't know.
Is it Joe Rogan? Because he seems to have all the other ones.
Yeah, one word keyword searches are impossible.
I guess if you Google Joe Rogan and horse dewormer, well, he got COVID.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. And he's taken the ivermectin or whatever that stuff's called. But anyway, yeah, so great reviews will be read on the air. So if you leave us a nice review over at the Apple Podcast app, we will Apple Podcast. What is wrong with my mouth today?
It's a rough day for Mike over here.
Just give us 5 stars. Say something nice to massage my delicate ego.
And should they tell us their story?
You can tell us your story by logging into middleagesrecovery. Well, you don't really log on. Just go to middleagesrecovery.com. There's a form you can fill out on the page, and we will read your story on the air. We may even have we had a contest a couple weeks ago for those of you who are new and haven't caught up, where we gave away some download codes for a couple of books by Joseph Naus, who we reviewed a few weeks ago, The Straight Pepper Diet and The False Graph Revelation. And those of you who are into recovery and want a really good read, you should go and check those books out. But Joseph sent me... You're giving me this look because I know you don't want to give these away.
I know.
We got 4 signed physical books.
You got 4?
Well, 2 of each.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you only sent me pictures of 2. He signed and like inscribed, I guess 4, I thought it was 2 of his books directly to like fans of Recovery in the Middle Ages. I'm a big fan of his, and I was like, why doesn't it say to Nat? You know, so keep listening to Recovery in the Middle Ages. So we're trying to decide what to do with these things.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we need another contest. Should we throw it open to the people, the group, and see if they can come up with some idea?
Monksters,
you know?
Let us know. What do you guys want to win these books? They're really cool. It's like hand signed by Joseph W. Naus, and he writes some funny shit in there.
Funny.
Maybe we won't reveal it until we give them away. But he's so, guy's nuts, man.
Yeah,
but he's so funny.
He's nuts, but he's very funny.
Yeah.
And a great writer, and they're great memoirs. So do check them out.
Yeah, maybe we'll get him on the show. We are back and forth with him, trying to figure out how to get him on.
I recently found out that I don't have to go to California next week. Yay for me, but sad for the show, because that means I don't get to sit down in his lavish Beverly Hills house or wherever he lives and do an interview in person, unfortunately. So.
Well, we shall see. He threatened to have his publishing company fly him out here.
He did.
Which would be amazing. I think I would be pretty intimidated, having him in the storeroom here. But
we might have to up our game a little bit and rent out some space or do it in a hotel ballroom or something. So
we had 5 winners. One of them, Ezra. I thought we would read his story today. It's a bit of a long one.
We should do that.
So here we go. Ezra, one of our winners. Hey, Mike and Nat. I'm such a huge fan of your podcast. It's really helped me in my day-to-day struggle. I have listened to every episode and will continue to listen. That's 51 episodes.
That is.
Today is 52.
Yeah.
I am only 35, not yet middle-aged.
That's what you think.
You are, man. You're middle-aged.
You're right in that target demo, my friend.
Right. You're it. But can relate to each of you anyway. That's why you can relate to us. You're middle-aged. I will warn you that my story is very long-winded. Here we go. I had a lot of trouble trying to pick and choose what to include in it. If my story is too long, please let me know and I will cut it down. If you decide to read my story, this is like a precursor.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to just read it.
Please refer to me as Ezra K.
Got it. My addiction started way before I ever picked up a drug or a drink. From a very early age, I knew I was different from everyone else. My parents didn't know what to do with me because I had so many issues they couldn't or didn't understand. It's pretty well written. Thank you, Ezra. I went from special school to a special school. I went from psychologist to psychologist and from psychiatrist to, so he's going all over. I was on so many different medications from a very early age. I was told to take them because they would help me at school.
So I took them without question, which, is very interesting how the amount of medicating that goes on kids these days. And, that's a show in and of itself.
Yeah.
I mean, because I went through this with my oldest son.
I'm going through it now.
Yeah. But anyway, yep, understood, Ezra, why that kind of could have messed you up your brain circuitry.
Man. I was bullied and teased relentlessly. I just wanted to find somewhere to fit in, but I never could. This continued throughout high school for me. I did find solace hanging with the theater crowd. Me too. I was in the Theater Arts Society. Acting when I could. Even still, nothing ever felt right. After I graduated high school, drug and alcohol use started.
Wow, late.
Yeah, I was rocking in.
At least you got out of high school intact.
Yeah. I managed to stay away from all the using and partying when I was younger. In the summer of 2004, it all changed. I would say that I made up for lost time, but that would be an extreme understatement. I started to get high with friends, but very soon I discovered that if I used by myself, I didn't have to share my drugs.
That's a light bulb moment, as we say, in the course of your drug addiction.
I never told people, even if I was hanging around people to die, if I had some shit, I would just pretend like I didn't have nothing.
Especially if it was cocaine. Oh, that was my cocaine, not your cocaine.
No one's getting a bump of my shit, man. What started out being just a social thing slowly turned into something much darker. I would get high from sunup to sundown. Whenever I could find dope, I got high. It started out with me being a complete stoner. Soon, the pot wasn't enough. And I started to try whatever I could get my hands on. Thankfully, I never came across anything harder than Coke.
I mean, I guess you got to draw a line somewhere, right?
What exactly is harder than Coke? I guess crack could be harder than Coke, and heroin maybe.
Crack is just Coke with a graduate degree.
Yeah, I would do Coke, drink, or a GED more likely. I would do Coke, drink, pop, snort pills, tripped on cough syrup. I did that too.
I've heard about that.
Robo tripping.
Yeah.
Took mushrooms, smoked opium, and
tussin up, they used to call it.
Tussin.
Yeah.
And on top of all that was massive quantities of weed. Nothing else mattered at that point but getting high. All this was going on when I got to college.
That worked out for you.
I don't know how I graduated with my BA in theater.
Wow, holy shit.
Wow, with theater, though, that's impressive.
Took me 13 years of doing drugs to figure that one out.
You know what? Being an actor, and I was a big, not a big actor, but I did a lot of acting. I do a lot of acting in life, and so part of how I feel like I got through was acting, and, just pretending like you weren't who you really were.
Well, don't all of us who struggle with this sort of thing?
Aren't we all
aren't we? I mean, don't we have that public-facing persona, and then inside it's a whole different ballgame? I mean, everybody does that, but
I know. I'm trying to like I talked about that on another show. Like I'm trying to unify who I've been projecting, and what is actually
that's
going
like
on.
Integration. It's really hard to do.
Once I graduated in 2009, this is back to the story. I moved back to my hometown. The using and drinking continued from 2009 to 2013. I pursued a career I thought I wanted, but in actuality, that was only what I thought I wanted. I was lost and didn't have any idea what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. I went to graduate school where I met my wife. We fell in love. She told me early on that my getting high wasn't a problem until it became a problem. Little did she know it had always been a problem. I feel like this is so parallel to my story too. I would lie and manipulate her into getting, finding, and paying for drugs for me. This all went on for about a year. Then everything really fell apart when I got arrested driving 101 miles per hour on the highway. Driving like I was in Grand Theft Auto trying to get to my dealer's house before he went to work. Oh,
that's funny. Did you ever drive 101 miles an hour trying to get to work so you're not late? Usually not.
No, but to go pick up.
The rewards are different.
Sometimes I did that on my way back from copping to get back to work in a reasonable hour. I mean, but it never did.
Yeah.
When I got
placed in...
Yeah, it didn't say he got arrested, but when he got placed in handcuffs, I was more terrified than I had ever been in my whole life. Luckily, I only got charged with reckless driving. Oh, yeah, I guess he didn't get drugs on him.
No, they didn't find his stash box.
No. I could have gotten into even more legal trouble if the cop would have found my stash box.
There you go.
If we could just be patient and listen for the story. I only had to serve...
It's a long story,
It is. I like it, though. I only had to serve 3 days in jail, thankfully, but that's a nightmare.
It? Yeah. I mean... That's a lot of days in jail for reckless driving.
I spent 2 days in jail, and let me tell you.
But for reckless driving? Like, what state is this? Do we know?
Well, 101 is like 40. It depends on what the speed limit was. Like, if he was in a 15, and you're 70 miles over there.
School.
Yeah. Right before I went to jail, I found out that my fiance, soon to be my wife, was pregnant. Wow, there's more. I remember lying on the floor. of the cell, and I was in and writing a letter to my unborn son. I don't really know what I said. Probably a whole lot of empty promises and half-assed apologies. I got out of jail on September 11th, 2014. I used for another month just before I couldn't go on anymore. On October 11th, 2014, I entered the rooms of NA and have not found a reason to change my clean date. That's amazing. Great. My son was born on March 26th, 2015. You should write a memoir. You're really good at putting in details here. This is good. I have had many ups and downs, good times and bad. No matter what obstacles I was facing, either internal or external, I didn't use. I got a sponsor and started working the steps. I got involved in service whenever I could and started to give back what was freely given to me. I know that might sound like some corny NA bullshit, but for me, it really worked. I began to feel better about who I was. I was working dead-end jobs, feeling miserable and worthless. I then heard about a position called peer recovery specialist, and I knew immediately that is what I wanted to do with my life. I took the peer recovery specialist training and started an internship at a local community service board in Virginia. I want to do that. I was considering getting a peer recovery specialist dealie. You have to go away here for like 4 days or something.
Where do you go?
I think it's something upstate. They have like it's a little like retreat. My wife said if I wanted to do it, she would support me.
Wow.
I think I kind of want to do that. When a position, it's like $700, I think. When a position opened up there, I applied for the job and got it. I've been working there for almost 2 years. I spend my days helping and support fellow addicts on their own recovery journey. I'm now a certified peer recovery sports specialist, a smart recovery facilitator.
Yes.
Awesome.
Now we're talking.
A smart recovery family and friends facilitator. I'm so blessed to have reached this point in my life. At the writing of this, I have 6 years sober, 7 on October 11th. My wife and I have been together for 8 years, married for 6. I don't know why she hasn't left me. At times, I tried to push her away, but I thank my lucky stars that she is still here by my side, despite everything I put her through. Our son is 6 years old, 7 on March 26th of 2022.
Yeah, that is detail-oriented.
Yeah. My wife, so like the J.R. Tolkien of like recovery memoirs. My wife and I are expecting our second child, another boy, who is due towards the end of this December. My life is far from perfect now. However, I do know that I wouldn't have any sort of life if I was still in active addiction. I am not cured and never will be.
Or addiction.
Or addiction. What did it say? Addition?
Addition. Active addiction.
My addiction is with me till the end, till the day I die. As long as I stay clean and follow the program, anything is possible for me. Whew. Thank you, Ezra, and thank you to the fans for being patient.
Hey, Guy.
I related to that a lot.
That was a great story. What I want to know is I suspect there's a whole other book that somewhere in between when you were talking about NA and then you becoming a smart recovery facilitator. And I would like to hear that story.
Yeah.
Because making the jump from 12-step base to smart recovery is an interesting leap to make.
Well, they always mention smart recovery. And in all of my outpatient rehabs that I've been to, everything is really AA. I noticed.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, for the most part. It also depends on the counselor that I had. If you had, like, a recovering alcoholic who was big into AA, that's what they spun. I found that when I had a straight-up, like, academic professional clinician type, they were more skeptical of AA.
Yes.
In general. You could tell, like, when I was super into AA, like, a real, like, big book thumper, and I was in one of these groups, I was talking to my therapist at the time about it, and you could tell she was like, that's great, but what you really need to do,
right?
She'd be like, keep going to your groups, that's great, keep talking, but
right.
What's really got to happen, is over here.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Well, what I find interesting is that smart recovery and AA just come from completely opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, there is no
value.
Of course, well,
do them together.
I guess. I don't know if you can do them together.
Sure, why not?
Maybe you can. I mean, different strokes for different folks, right? People who are extremely religious and spiritual, I guess, will naturally gravitate towards the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then people who are of more rational mind and scientifically minded will have lots of problems with it. So I think whatever works for you is fine. I don't think there's any one true way of recovery or any one way up the mountain.
Thank you, Ezra. And next we have a review to read.
Yes, review from Lowell S. Lowell Lass, I believe,
Not
right?
Lowell Ass.
Not Lowell Ass. 1 year sober, 5-star review. August 26, 2020 was my final. August 27th, 2020 was the start of my new life. Coke and booze has been my best bud for too long. I tried over the years to stop on my own, but it didn't stick. It took a massive breakdown and a trip to rehab to open my eyes. My beautiful daughter and family have been my rock. Also, I found your podcast the week I got out of rehab in October, and I haven't missed one.
So awesome.
That's great. I love your family stories and not having the AA program being front and center. Keep up the great work, and I will too. Kara in Seabrook Beach. Oh, that dovetailed nicely with my last comment, which you just sort of ignored and went straight into
it. Yeah, I figured we need to move on because we've got so much to talk about.
Oh, we do. Speaking of our family stories,
yes,
back to school week.
Yeah, it is back to school. It is insanity. It's a mix of feelings. I'm so happy the kids are back in school, especially with COVID. Things are better, but
back to school with COVID.
It's like getting all the way back into this groove. Things are different.
Do you like the groove?
I need the groove. I'm a groove. I always complain about that. Like when I can count on my kids are going to be here at this time and I can be here at that time, I know that there's like at least 4 hours that I can get done the things I need to do.
That is a good thing. I noticed yesterday, like for the first time, and I was alone in the house since the end of since my wife stopped working, in her school district. It was so quiet.
Yeah.
Aside from the pug farting in the other room, everything was just very chill. Yeah. But I mean, I prefer when everybody's around, but I am more productive when they are not.
Yeah.
I have to say. But yeah, I mean, I got some great news this week, which kind of took away a bunch of the stress because we were really worried about how everybody was going to get to school because my son Jack is going up to a private school, Catholic school up 4 towns away.
Yeah.
And, the bus would have to come and get him at like 6:45 in the morning. And he's not like a morning person. So he wants to take the train, which you can do, but someone would have to drive him to the train station. And I'm like, I got to go back to work in 3 weeks. Don't know how that's going to work. Don't know how my youngest son, Ben, is going to get himself together and out the door because my wife will already be gone.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, I got like the fairy godmother dropped an email in my inbox yesterday from the CEO of my company who said that we are indefinitely postponing our return to the office.
So great.
Yes, it is so great.
We were very unsure on how we were going to proceed here.
Yeah, well, we were going to proceed. That's the important thing, right? I mean, we were definitely going to proceed. But how? I don't know.
We would have figured it out, but this is cool. And you've got 3 kids. You have one who's, a senior?
Yeah, he's going to graduate this year.
Another starting a new school who's going to 9th grade?
Yep, 9th grade.
And then a son my son's age, not my age, who is going back to the public school in the 6th grade, which is a big change from 5th grade.
All 3 of them are in different schools.
So I'm stressing out because my oldest, who he's brilliant, but he's also not like a traditional learner. He's diagnosed ADHD, which is a recent thing, and so it just sort of verifies what we all. Even him, he was like, "Yeah, I mean that's me," and I'm like, "Okay, great." Like I don't see that as a bad thing. I see it as okay. Now we have a direction. Now we know how to, and this new setup in the 6th grade, it's not sitting in one class like elementary school all day long. And so he loves it. He loves his homeroom teacher, and it really is better for him the way 6th grade is going. I don't know. How does Ben like your son like the new like going teacher to teacher and things?
He really likes it.
Yeah. And they give him more freedom.
There's a couple of teachers in that grade who really are very good. There's a male teacher or 2, which is different.
Yeah. As you get older, you get more male teachers.
Yeah, but that's something that he's not had before. So,
really?
Well, no, he did last year.
There's the one teacher that everybody loves.
Right.
It was one of the reasons I was like, when I was looking to get into education or thinking about it, I was like, everyone's like, go into elementary school education. There's no men. You'll get a job instantly.
It's true.
You're an old drug addict.
Problem is you have to be around kids all day.
Yeah, that can be rough.
That would drive me insane.
I love kids, I mean,
I like them too, but I like my own, and I like they're friends. I don't know if I'd like a bunch of strangers' children, but which is why people who do that work, God bless them.
God bless them. God bless,
including our wives.
Our wives
who are excellent.
Did you see Noah's hair? Are you aware of what happened to my oldest's hair?
I am aware of his hair, but I do not. Why don't you tell everybody else who's not aware of?
So, as you may or may not know, my oldest son, he's kind of cool, right? He's kind of like, he's doing his cool thing. He grew his hair out, I was the same way. Not at his age, but I was a long hair. I dyed my hair in high school and stuff. And his hair's grown out. We've been letting him keep it so long as it stays brushed, and I don't want to see dreadlocks, He really wanted, it's very popular right now for kids, like normal kids, to just like dye their hair blue and green. Like this is way more common these days. They do it at a salon, and he wanted to get his whole head blue. I guess there's a YouTuber who does it or something, and believe it or not, hypocritically, I was completely against it. I'm like, no, you're not dyeing your hair blue. That's absurd,
That's a high school thing, not a sixth grade thing.
No, but he seems to be more advanced. Partially my fault. I'm going to blame myself for this. But I said no. But my wife was like, you know what? Yes. I'm going to say yes. And so
the whole hair?
No.
All right.
The compromise was these blue highlights, and he has dark brown hair. And it turned out to be really cool. It does look cool. I'm jealous as hell.
When you first told me about that, I learned something. What I learned was you have to bleach the hair first before you put the dye in, or you can't even see it.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't ever have that advantage. My parents would never have done that for me. So I used to use sun in. Yeah.
Right.
And then I would dye my hair some ridiculous color. We'd get Manic Panic from that head shop in the neighboring town. And in any case, so that's a big change. And, my youngest loves his new teacher. Maxie is easy, man. He's just an easy kid. He's so great, and he's doing great at school. Very happy to be back.
Well, my son, who is, like I said, starting at a new Catholic school.
Yeah, they're pretty serious over there.
Yeah, they have to wear jackets and ties and dress pants, and he has been used to rolling out of bed and going to school, and
did he
the
cut
usual
his hair?
thing, the sweatpants and he did.
Wow,
he was not happy at all.
He had pretty long hair.
He had very long hair, and it was cut now above his collar. Right. I made my wife take him. Like, I'm not going to do it. You take him to like a salon and have him do it.
Yeah.
So he's been having a little bit of a rough transition. I mean, he's a very smart kid. The problem is our local high school is just I don't know if it really has the programs for him. So we made the decision to send him there. Took him on a tour. I explained everything to him, but that's very different from actually showing up and having to wear those clothes when it's like 90 degrees outside and all this other stuff. So I'm hoping things smooth out.
It's a great opportunity I know kids can't see that when they're in it,
of course not.
Graduating from there is a great opportunity.
But I had a very adult conversation with him about why he's there and stuff, because and here's something I couldn't have done a few years ago when I was still half hungover in the bag. Like, I didn't instantly react to his dislike of the place.
You didn't have an emotional.
I didn't have an emotional response.
You're doing great. I just paid for this.
Or grow up. Or just get over it.
You had a conversation.
I had a conversation with him.
Imagine that.
Yeah, and and I think it. I mean, God knows what he thinks inside his head. But I said, listen, I just need you to give it a try. Do your best, and we'll reevaluate halfway through the year and see where we're at.
Yeah, I get a lot further, I think, just like listening a little bit. And I really fight against reacting emotionally to things my kids say and the things they do. And I feel like that's just my parenting style. I'm not saying it's wrong, because look, my brother was more of a shut him down, and he was even a little bit of capital punishment. I think he was a hitter. And I'm not for that, but his kids came out great.
Capital punishment?
Hitting.
Oh, okay.
Just a whack, right. Or
seems a little severe if you're going to execute your children.
And so my parenting style, I think I have a better relationship. Maybe they're kids. They're not going to behave perfectly. You expect a kid to be like a Marine. It ain't happening. And,
especially if they're used to a certain way of being, and then they, that's the thing for him. It's
parenting. Am I right?
Yeah.
So the other thing, I had an interesting time. I think it was last Friday. We had tickets to see the great James Taylor at the Jones Beach Amphitheater. Which one is this?
Going to Carolina.
Oh, I love this song. In my mind, I'm going to Carolina. Did you say California?
No.
I thought you said I'm going to California. He was amazing.
Shit. That's Led Zeppelin. Different band.
He was amazing. Kind of boring. It's James Taylor. He plays I like James Taylor best when he doesn't have all of that cheesy 70s pop instrumentation, when he's not doing that, where it's just his guitar, him, backup singers, and he plays the songs. He played Copperline, which is one of my favorite songs, and all of his classics. And Jackson Browne opened for him, and he's got a bunch of. In any case, it was I'm glad that we did it. It was my wife and I, and her cousin and husband. We're really good friends with them, and of course, it's very popular. Who's this? Jackson Browne?
You were talking about cheesy 70s instrumentals by James Taylor. I'm sorry, I just had to bring this up because I'm kind of a big fan.
Yeah. Whenever I see your smile, this is actually good. I'm thinking certain saxophones and.
Boy, the guy can write a hit, though. I'll tell you,
he's brilliant. And what I didn't know about him is, and I feel like an idiot for not knowing this. Apparently, it's a famous thing. He dedicated a song to those in recovery.
Indeed.
I wish I remembered what song it was, but he said before he played it. That the song he wrote after John Belushi died, I guess they were friends. He put a verse about that, at the front of it, and said, that experience scared him sober, were the exact words that he used.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great. But he also said something else, because in the crowd you could smell the pot. I'm sure I inhaled marijuana, these are old white people,
old hippies,
and we pre-gamed in the parking lot, which I don't love doing, but I'm pretty good at doing that without drinking these days. Yeah, but in that parking lot, it was nice. We actually brought sushi.
Oh, that's
which is extremely bougie.
Got to bring some food.
We had chairs. We were hanging out.
And this was at the beach, right? You saw, yeah.
And so my wife, of course, they bring all the booze that they're going to drink, but she's, she was supposed to bring my sodas. My special drink is Dr. Pepper usually, or a Mexican Coke. That's my special drink.
Can't let go of the Mexican Coke.
I love it. And even with the deviated septum, I can have as much as I want. And so we had a good time, but it was just funny. I overheard this just old people. I'm talking 70s. Oh, we got gummies. You want a gummy?
Yeah.
It's yeah, sure. Literally. And then we were
old folks tripping out on THC gummies.
And we had the nosebleed seats, but as it was going, man, puffs, you could smell the pot, and people are just lighting up just in the open.
That's so old school. That's how you're at a boomer concert, because the newer concerts, the newer bands, people smoking pot, they're just vaping it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
You don't smell anything.
Yeah, it was a legit old people.
The boomers are just
pot.
roasting bones up in the stands.
So in 1983, James Taylor got sober attending AA, but it is an ongoing process getting clean. He took methadone to address his heroin usage, and that became a powerful addiction in itself. It really lives in your bones, he said. Quote, it just takes forever to get over it. Unquote. It helped to see addiction as a physical disease. That's just a little blurb that I found about his recovery. So
interesting.
He was a serious recovering dude. I don't know.
Did you ever see the cover of the Gorilla album? What does that look like to you? That was at the sort of the height of his addiction. It looks like he's on the nod to me, but
Oh, in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting, a little recovery thing. And what I was drinking all night, where I'm going with this is, I got this can of water. I posted it on our...
How much they charge you for that can of water?
It was $6 or something.
Jesus Christ.
But what was really weird is I took that really cool picture I posted in our private group of the water I was drinking. Mm-hmm. So on our way home, my wife says, look at this. Somehow Jones Beach's social media posted my picture on their page.
What?
Yeah. It was, I don't know how they must have, because I wrote Jones Beach when I posted it on my regular page.
Okay.
So not the private. I did it on both. So they must have searched Jones Beach, found my picture, and then said, but I didn't give them permission. I didn't send it to anybody.
Did you tag them?
No, I didn't even tag it. Maybe it auto-tagged me with the GPS, and then they're able to see it. But they did both of my pictures. I took a picture of James Taylor on the Megatron or whatever.
Really?
Both of those pictures were in a post they made about the show that was about 25 pictures long.
There's probably some disclaimer on your ticket that allows them to do that.
Is that a little creepy? But
it is a little creepy.
They loved my photograph of the bottle of water.
It was a good picture of a bottle of water.
Thank you. So that was exciting. How did you do with this hurricane? Did everybody else get a hurricane?
A recent one?
Hurricane
Ida.
Like the last
2 days?
Yeah, we
it was fine.
We got the tail end.
It was moist. People were drowning in their basements and cars, but
I don't know. How did you monsters out there do with the hurricane? Did you get hit? I mean, New Orleans really again got nailed, and so our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody. There's like 1 million people out of power in the dead of and it's hot out. We really in New York, southern New York, you could say, just got a lot of rain. The subways in New York City got flooded.
Yeah, they look like rivers. More people, though, died in New Jersey than died in Louisiana from this. Yeah, there was like a whole bunch of people got killed in tornadoes and drowned. So our thoughts go out to our friends in New Jersey as well.
So that was rough, but again, we sort of dodged a bullet here.
Where are we with time? Wow.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what?
So maybe we should skip ahead to our topic, eh?
Yeah. I think at this time, we are going to get Erin Moore on the phone for Get Smart with Erin Moore. We're discussing from our last week's discussion about sponsorship. As we discussed what we wanted to do next, it sort of naturally came up as this 13-step problem. And so
what is the 13th step?
The 13th step is, I guess it's a euphemism for when someone older in AA or anyone in AA, like basically sexually harasses a newbie,
preys upon,
rapes
or kills in some cases.
13th step could be as simple as just making making them feel uncomfortable because you're trying to date them, any kind of stuff like that. But it gets really bad. And we were just discussing a documentary called The 13th Step, which really kind of exposes some of the safety issues that have come because of the unsafety and the unregulated nature of AA groups. On top of judges.
It was something I didn't even really consider. But when you have AA being used as an alternative for incarceration for not only people who are convicted of offenses like DUI, but even people who have committed sexual assaults and other crimes, judges and prosecutors are requiring these folks to go to AA meetings. Because AA is there, because it's ubiquitous and it's one of the only places that exist where you can send people. You can't. What I also found was interesting is that you cannot, in half the states in the country, you cannot mandate that someone go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting because they are considered a religious organization. But in the other half, apparently you can. And what the result being is that you have these people who have long criminal records, who maybe they got picked up for a DUI this time, but they have a 50-page rap sheet which includes sex assaults, all this other stuff, and judges are saying, okay, instead of sending you to jail for 5 years, if you can show me that you've gone to AA for, and you get your card stamped or whatever, and you come back, we'll drop the charges. So it's basically sending these predators into Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Yeah. And the secondary problem, of course, being is that these AA meetings are locally run, and there's no
Yeah.
There's no police force in AA. There's nobody that's going to,
Yeah. I mean, look, this is by no means how it always goes in AA. It is a danger. It's something that we wanted to highlight since we're talking about sponsorship, because we're going to recommend, when we recommend our tandem sponsor program, we're also recommending seeking out a mentor. And so that may still put you in a situation where, there's somebody who you're looking up to who, could possibly take advantage of you. It happens in almost every organization, sadly. The Cub Scouts, the Cub Scout leaders, the churches, youth groups. And so we just wanted to sort of highlight that this is also a danger in AA and other 12-step groups. It doesn't, not to say that you can't get a lot out of it and get and be safe, but just one of those things, because when you first go into these groups, you're typically at your most vulnerable,
right?
And so it's so important that, and this is why we recommend the tandem sponsoring. It's like you bring in a friend who's looking out for you,
right?
Just like when girls would go out and they always bring a friend, they would never shouldn't hit the bar alone. They'd always have a girlfriend,
right?
So with that,
or a wingman,
I think we're going to try and get Erin Moore on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, we should say that the examples that they put forward in this movie, 13th step of people meeting people in AA and then ending up dead. That's not the norm, but something that happens probably more frequently is just more subtle forms of manipulation, control,
and who are these people? And especially if you're sending a daughter to AA or a son, even it's something to worry about.
That's not what I wanted to do.
Okay, so with that,
let's hold on 1 second, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back.
All right,
technical issues resolved. Ooh, that's a bit hot.
Yeah.
Hello, Erin.
Welcome to the show. The great Erin Moore has returned to discuss sponsorship, the 13th step, and just tell us how you're doing. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's a nice morning, and prior to this, I was just enjoying my coffee and getting my game face on.
Yeah, how's the new place? I know that last time we talked to you, which, by the way, the Relapse Spectacular, both of those episodes set records for downloads. So
yes, everyone was really into your relapse.
But it was a very
everyone except me.
Right.
And so just how are you doing with all that stuff? You feeling better? I mean, you were doing good last we spoke to you, but you were in a bit of a transition, and you're getting all settled in your new place. So just how's all of that going?
It's all going. Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask my sponsor, she would say, it's all going just how it's supposed to. No, but it is. You love hearing shit like that, right? Sponsorship. It's going great. And, I'll say it certainly was a lot of transition and has been. But I think that's when we get to the next level in general in life, right, is through that pain being the touchstone of all spiritual growth shit.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it. It's a good outlook. Funny you mentioned your sponsor.
Good segue.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Is she here? I'm in trouble. All right, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
There's an idea for a show. We should get alcoholics on, and then unbeknownst to them, have their sponsors listening, and then they can jump in at the end.
Oh, man. Oh, my God. That would be great. Yeah. And I did not say that. Yeah, that would be.
So you must, you've got a sponsor now. Have you always gotten a sponsor? What's your overall, stance on sponsorship and, how it's working for you?
Well, I think, for what sponsorship was really intended for initially, my stance on it is that when it comes down to needing some guidance going through the 12 steps, I don't see any other way to do it other than being guided by someone else who has done that previously. And so I think that for all intents and purposes, it's such a valuable thing. Most of the time, we'll have different ideas of what sponsorship is, or whether it's overblown or it's something that we heard that sponsors do things like loan us money or drive us around places that don't have anything to do with meetings or various things. So most of it has to do with expectations and boundaries.
Like you shouldn't be washing your sponsor's car, right? That's
I think that, and I'll tell you, my caveat with that is that I know a lot of people do incorporate that type of thing into it. Usually if they're doing it for some therapeutic value, which I can't say if they are or they aren't, it's not my style. They're doing it with them. They're not doing it. They're not getting the sponsee to do it for them. Does that make sense?
Well, ideally, yes, that's the way it should go.
But
right?
I personally don't get sponsees to do chores.
But that's a great point.
I'm doing it wrong.
You make a great point. Like we're sort of kind of arguing about it out loud on the show right now. Like I think having a sponsor, like you said, someone to take you through it, someone who's been there, and I pointed out, someone to show you where the bathroom is at the meeting, and all of that stuff, and have the support. And so and obviously Mike has had a different experience with sponsors, and we've all heard these stories. Like I've had good experiences with sponsors. It didn't keep me sober, but you could say that's just my fault. But
what you could, but
lots of
wrong.
people. I mean, obviously, Erin, was this sponsor with you for your relapse, or is this a new sponsor? And how did they handle that with you if she was your sponsor at the time?
Well, the sponsor I have now is a new sponsor, new to me, in that role. We've known each other for several years and have been, friendly throughout the program, although I wouldn't say that we're very close friends, which is what makes it something that was not as difficult a transition for me to seek her out as a sponsor. Sometimes if, your two closest friends or you have some basis like that for a relationship, then it can make it a little stickier and probably not a great idea. But, so I did not, prior to that, have a sponsor for about a year and a half. And of course, some might argue before that I probably had sponsored myself at plenty of times in my sobriety. But whereas, if you're really staying close and at least seeking out guidance when you meet situations you don't know how to handle, then you're not just trying to figure it all out yourself. But with her, she was somebody who I felt comfortable enough that I could trust with some things that kind of came out of the relapse that required a great deal of trust to be able to share and to work through with somebody. So having someone I already felt that I had shared some of that with worked in my favor at that point.
That's an interesting point. Just to touch on something you said, you don't think like if you're really good friends with someone that would lend itself to being a good sponsor relationship? I presume it's because there's some things that you would tell a sponsor that you don't necessarily feel comfortable telling a friend. But, the converse of that is, when you walk into the rooms for the first time and you have to ask somebody to sponsor you, you really don't know them at all. The person you're asking.
Yeah,
so,
a lot of people, that is a trick. I mean, I remember in AA meetings.
So you don't know what you're going to get.
They always have temporary sponsors. They usually say anyone with a year or more, if you're willing to be a temporary sponsor.
Right. They
raise their hands. But much has been made of making like the new people have to call the sponsors, or they pass around a phone list, and then it was always extremely difficult for me to make that first phone call. But do you think it should be more normal for them to call the new person, and to they should be reaching out to the new person? I don't know.
Well, I'll pedal back to just to what Mike was saying, and when he asked, about the friendship aspect, my concern about using someone as a sponsor who's been a friend is a little bit more that there's, I don't know how else to put it, but there's a natural power disparity that comes with being what someone would perceive as, and I say perceive as because we meet as equals in AA, perceive as an authority figure. And when you're choosing a sponsor, usually that's how you're looking at them, whether it's warranted, healthy, whatever, that we kind of need that, because if we're going to look at somebody who we want to guide us, we kind of have to look at them that way to some degree. Mm-hmm. But if if we have someone that we've always seen in a different way or had a certain relationship with, there are plenty of times when a sponsor has to tell me about myself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right.
And in ways that certain friendships don't, they don't have that aspect. And so it can be a little more uncomfortable because you're worried that you might say the wrong thing to a sponsee and now you've cost yourself a friendship as well. Mm-hmm. And you might be less likely to be candid with them about something they need to hear about themselves.
Yeah. One thing that you hear said in the rooms is that you should find someone who you want what they have. So like some of the ways I looked for a sponsor was I'd be in the meetings, and then if somebody would be speaking, usually, or the guy who was chairing the meeting, and I thought they were particularly wise, or I wanted their insight, and you got a good feeling, and that's a good way to do it, I think, and I feel like. The sponsorship, like we were talking about how, Mike and I are basically like workout buddies, and we're calling ourselves tandem sponsors when it comes to it. But we're always sort of referring to like a higher text or something we're studying, whether it's the Naked Mind program. I obviously draw a lot from 12-step or books that we're reading. And so we were sort of trying to like suss out, how would we, reorganize this to be more equitable, but would still help someone, get a mentor who could guide them, through the beginnings of it, and then sort of, maybe back off and become more of a peer.
Because
right.
when you look at
what most people don't tell you about temporary sponsorship, right? That when you mentioned that idea is, surprise, they're all temporary potentially. Like
right. Mm-hmm.
People think they're choosing their life mate when they're choosing a sponsor, right? And I'm always very open with new people, like just choose somebody. You can fire them later. You can get a new one. Now the thought of that is terrifying to most of us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's what nobody tells you, is that you are not signing a contract. You are not they're not entitled to your time. You're not obligated to continue to use them. If you find for some reason you want a new one, well, the other people in the program will help you to navigate through that too.
That's very hard. That's a hard ask for someone who's new.
Oh, it is. Well, and I always hope it doesn't turn out like that, but I never want them to feel like they're choosing, because sometimes they won't choose at all, because I won't, if I think, well, shit, this is my one shot at choosing the right sponsor, and I'm fucked if I don't.
I mean, the way they originally envisioned sponsorship, I guess the Bill and Dr. Bob, was that, it's somebody who'll take you through the steps, and they articulated way back when that they thought that was something that could be done in an afternoon. But the way it's sort of morphed over the years, it's almost now like it's it resembles like a quasi-therapeutic relationship. Because let's face it, you're getting guidance in the 12 steps from a sponsor, but you're also, you can't help but look up to them as somewhere, quote, more advanced than you in recovery. And you're going to ask them for advice in all different aspects, all different areas of your life. And that can be problematic, especially when the person who is the sponsor really doesn't have your best interest at heart. Plus, even if they do, they're not trained professionals. They can't,
Yeah, it's the learning from their experience, strength, and hope.
They're not. Yeah, if they're a good sponsor, they're not giving you advice.
Right.
But one
if they
wishes there was
understand their role.
one wishes there was a little bit of training, maybe
Yeah.
that the AA
I think
organization
that's a- it would be
could
nice.
just,
I wonder,
you know,
like, why don't they do
Yeah.
that? You know, having this conversation, I'm sort of like thinking about, you know, what is the best way we can educate people looking to get into recovery who are going into AA, which I recommend highly. You know, how can we prepare someone to know what to expect and to, you know, kind of be able to identify when it's clearly like a predator or someone who's on a power trip, or, you know, like I lucked out having, you know, 4 sponsors that were great. And for the most part, it was the way I was approaching it that was sort of unhealthy, if ever. And I was very lucky to have more than one sponsor say to me, like, you know, remember where you met me. You know, anytime
Exactly.
they thought
like,
I was,
I'm not
you
the
know,
wellest person in the room all the time, y'all.
and I always appreciated that. And the other thing they would say is, you know, because you always feel bad calling a person. You're like, oh, I'm sorry I called it so late. And they always would tell me, you know, you're helping me more than I'm helping you. And, you know, maybe having like a training program, you know, where they have best practices for how you ought to, you know, approach sponsorship. Maybe that would be a fix. Maybe that would really help, because you always hear about stories, you know, about bad things happening.
or even just
the first
like,
thing you'll hear. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go
well,
ahead.
I was going to say, or even just like some basic ethical training. Even if you're not going to have any other kind of training, then at least ethics and training and boundaries and where you draw lines and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
would be
because just because
helpful.
they say they're sober doesn't mean that they're really like equipped to be in that kind of situation. So it's sort of
that's true. And
dangerous,
some
you know?
areas will have like workshop, you know, sponsorship workshops where they'll, you know, I mean, that's kind of put on by individual, you know, intergroups or areas or whatever. It's not mandatory. But the other thing is that if you've ever heard someone speak at the podium and they say, I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, they're saying that so, you know, so that I guess the implication is that they, you know, are having things passed down along that way. If you have a sponsor who has a sponsor, then really they should be utilizing, you know, that sponsor in guidance on how to help you.
Yeah.
And so one thing you can find out from a potential sponsor is, do they have one? And is it somebody who is known to seem to have some sense?
Yeah.
And you don't know that right away, right? So it's also the argument for maybe not getting a sponsor the day you walk in. You know, but then how long do you wait? I don't really know, but I do suggest waiting till you get a good enough feel for the room that you can tell who sounds like an absolute maniac.
Right. Yeah.
And don't pick them, you know. But I was so insecure about rejection and abandonment and stuff. Like when I got my very first sponsor in 2013 in AA, I hadn't been around very long, and it all played out the way it needed to because of all the shit I faced in my first month of sobriety. But there were 2 women besides myself attending meetings in this small town, and that was typical here. And so the pool was not very, you know, there were other women, but those are the only 2 women that had more sobriety than you know, a year or so. And in the middle of a meeting, because I was so like I would die if I asked somebody and they said no. In the middle of a meeting, I said, "Oh, and so is going to be my sponsor right away." She doesn't know it, but she knows it now.
Right.
You know, and it was like it was the most like manipulative, you know, and I didn't see it that way, and I don't see it as harmfully either. It was clearly very insecure. Because I thought, well, she's not going to say no in front of all these people, right? Like that would make her the asshole, you know?
Yeah, it feels like asking a girl out on a date. I remember feeling
it totally did.
And when I wanted to quote unquote fire a sponsor or something, it literally had that same emotion of like breaking up with someone. You know what I mean? But
well, and I never did that in a healthy way either. Right. I broke up with them like I did every guy ever, just to not mention it, and I hope he got the hint.
Just ghosting the sponsor.
Yeah, but, Working the steps, though, one of the good things, because I do want to, try and, also highlight what are the good things about sponsorship. And for me, in AA, doing the 12 steps for me is the program. It's the most important part, probably, besides service. Well, it's all part of one thing, but and so that was where I got a lot of traction. When I had a really good sponsor, we were meeting and either reading the big book together, discussing it, or directly working on the steps together, and every sponsor had a different approach. Like some would be like, you're not ready to work the steps, which is crazy. And then some would be like, here's our schedule. We're going to be step 1 this month. We're going to see how you do. And then, and I got a lot, especially that 4th step, and 5th step, where you're writing down all of the things wrong to you. And, so it could be very valuable when it comes to that. I mean, are you going to work the steps again, let's say, with your newer sponsor? I mean, what do you feel about, reworking steps with new sponsors?
Well, some of it is about getting acquainted in a certain way. And I can see how there are people who might feel a certain way about that when it comes to their ego or like, oh, well, fuck that. I already did all that. I just want to start at step 4. And, I could see how, and I kind of felt bad for my new sponsor because she had a certain respect level for me that I think she was worried about offending me early on because I had a good, I had almost 8 years, and she knew me as she moved into this area when I probably had about 5 or 6 years, and saw me in a certain light as kind of a service leader and a leader in a lot of ways. And, I was like, listen, I am, the desperation that came across, my desk, in the midst of this relapse and after, like, I have no qualms about starting over in whatever way helps you get to know me. Because if I knew that if I still had certain terms or conditions, I probably wasn't ready to let go of what I thought I knew, meaning a damn thing,
Yeah, it takes a tremendous amount of like humbling yourself. Anytime I saw like a quote unquote old timer who maybe had like 20 years who still talked about their sponsor when they shared, or was clearly still, putting themselves in like, I don't know everything, but I mean, it's very rare, but that, that I think that can go a long way. One of the other aspects of it's, partially sponsorship, but just older, more experienced people, or just like predators, we were wondering, like, we were talking about the 13th step. We weren't going to do we were going to talk about that documentary, but I wondered, I mean, it's usually more of a problem for women, I think, who are more vulnerable sometimes for whatever reason, kind of like just because men are sex crazed bastards, type of thing. And
you said it, I did not.
Well, yeah, well, we know this is true. I mean, not all of them, but certainly not me. I wondered, we hear a lot about this, and I wonder, did you experience anything like that where, you were super vulnerable, you were new, and, someone who's either been around or just pretended to be kind of, made you uncomfortable? I mean, do you think that's a real problem?
Well, 13th stepping is oftentimes really misunderstood, and what I mean by it is that just dating in the rooms is not necessarily 13th stepping. People call, if you seem to have an equality about you, if there's not one that has less time. My personal experience with that, and I will not call him a 13th stepper because I don't think that was his intention, but in a lot of cases it is their intention. And also, I mentioned 2013 as being when I got my first sponsor in AA. It's also when I first came to AA, and within a month of sobriety, I was in a relationship with someone who had a couple of years.
Wow. Yes, and that could be problematic. I mean, but how did that work out?
Oh, that did not, that ended this year, as a matter of fact. So it could have been worse.
Right.
It could have been worse as far as I don't know how either of us stayed sober through a lot of those years. But what it did for me, I didn't have the foundation I needed to come to a relationship as an equal at that point. And like I said, I don't think it was I don't think on the surface it was a predatory behavior, but it's certainly, my mother died a couple weeks into my sobriety, and within 2 weeks I was in a relationship with this man who had similar tendencies of emotional abuse and things. It was just kind of a shift, and it was my higher power shifted, to this relationship.
Right.
And
two sickies don't make a welly. They always say that.
And it's true. And it's true. And we both suffered in a lot of ways over the years because of the fact that neither of us, could really see a lot of that, the trauma bonding and a lot of that stuff that went on. But, it was never going to probably end well. And, I'll say that this is the first time that I've done sobriety all by myself. You know what I mean? Like when I think about it, it's kind of crazy. Those 7 years I never did any of that as one whole unit acting independently.
Right. And now you're reaching out in a healthy way to other alcoholics and addicts, and the sponsor, hopefully, so much of it comes from your own approach to it and your perception. Every time, because I've been to a lot of rehabs, and you see these rehab romances come up all the time. There's a great documentary called Dope Sick Love that just follows around to, heroin addicts and, who are in love. And it's just oh
that
my
dopamine
God.
Is some real shit, man. Shift it. It's going to shift.
And it's so hard, not to fall into that because it's such a comforting thing. And I've actually heard of and seen scenarios, I cringe every time, I would have a buddy in rehab who's like, oh, we're together, man. We're going to do this together. We're going to get sober. And I'm like, dude, no, you're not. And sometimes,
imagine working at a detox. I did that for a few years.
I don't know how
every
you do
week was like a new story. They're like, this is different. Okay.
They're like puppies, they can't help themselves, but I always cringe. But once in a while, it goes right, and the two people, they get together, they work it out together, they get married, they have a great relationship. But it is very much like, that's why they say don't do anything in the first year, because they think maybe when you get a little more mentally stable, you'll be in a better position, to make that kind of decision.
I don't know. There's a lot of people out there who are
right?
not mentally.
So whoever I'm attracting at my sickest they cannot be well people.
Yeah, AA is not. They always say it's not a hotbed of mental health,
right? That's kind of where I was going with that. But I'm sort of wondering how common it is, in a sponsor relationship that people sort of end up with the kind of person that is kind of more on their emotional level of maturity rather than someone who is.
It always seems to be very like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker. Yeah. Which maybe is how it should be.
Well, ideally that's how it would be, right? But is that how it ends up?
Well, they always say.
Do you mean that they're just as sick as you are?
Yeah.
They're sick.
Is that what you're, yeah.
Or people who are damaged in a certain way tend to find one another, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's tricky. And you definitely need a mentor for sure. But it's scary what in this documentary, they're really just trying to call attention to there are judges, and the court system that are mandating sex offenders who aren't even necessarily alcoholics to attend to AA.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And there have been a series of really bad outcomes from that. And I wonder if that's wise. When I was in the court system, I had a DWI, but that didn't mean I'm necessarily an alcoholic. And I was definitely mandated, at least by my probation officer and in my groups that I was forced to be in.
Were you mandated to a 12-step program, or were you mandated for some kind of counseling? Because
both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the Supreme Court ruled that technically, and I don't know how this trickles down locally. I'm sure there's somebody that knows this, but I know that there was a ruling at the Supreme Court level that they were no longer allowed to sentence you to AA or a 12-step program specifically because of the religious,
Correct.
The religious freedom aspect.
Yeah, they can't sentence you to
when
church.
When they say recovery, yeah, like with an attorney, a lot of times, with the defense attorneys I know around here, their job is to try to find you a lesser, like if they can call something related to alcohol or drugs and get you into rehab or a recovery program rather than, whatever your actual crime was, say it was, a sexual offense or something. If they can find some way it was related to alcohol or drugs, well, sometimes they're going to push that when really that's not the it's a different kind of sickness.
Well, you just look at the whole Me Too movement. Even Harvey Weinstein, Anthony Weiner, all these guys.
But they just go to rehab.
They go to rehab for alcohol. They blame the alcohol and then boom, rehab.
That's always been like that. The Inquirer, has always been like, oh, so and so's in rehab. It was really because whatever the story was about to come out, and it was something having nothing to do with any of that.
But I mean, AA has no way of filtering out or exercising any sort of control over this situation.
They depend a lot. It's like they depend a lot, completely on local groups. And so that's why it's one of the reasons if someone says, oh, I went to an AA meeting and it sucked, didn't work for me. I'm like, well, did you try a different one? It's in that same way, each group. And so there's really, and that was part of what the 13-step documentary is trying, sort of exposing that, she goes, all of these.
There's no protection.
Right. And they won't even acknowledge it. I mean, even if they did like public service announcements or a pamphlet, like how to stay safe in AA, and of course they're afraid of how it'll affect people, scare them away. But maybe it'd be better to just, give people a heads up. Like, listen, this is not like a super safe, regulated therapeutic environment. You're going into a scenario where there's a lot of good people, but, you got to watch your back, especially with younger women. It's part of the reason they have like teen groups and things like that. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable sending my 17-year-old daughter to NA, a regular NA meeting. I really wouldn't. I would probably try and look for, if I had to do that, a teen group type of thing. So there's a lot of dangers, and it's hard to call it out without scaring people away, and that's sort of the problem.
Well, I think AA's fundamental failure to address this issue on any meaningful level speaks volumes about the organization, to be honest.
It reminds me of the Catholic Church not calling out priests.
Sure.
It reminds me of the Boy Scouts pretending like it wasn't happening.
But,
it's endemic.
Once you got to a tipping point, though, both of those organizations that you mentioned were forced to confront mostly because of lawsuits and because of the threat of financial ruin and dissolution.
Yeah.
So, does that need to happen with AA?
Such a broad scale. Like if you even look at I'm pretty sure in that documentary they touched on, I think, the Carla Mendez Brada murder, and that she had met the man that ended up murdering her in AA. And this is a whole other topic, right? But specifics of that were basically she met him. He wasn't there by court order, but
are you talking about Carla?
Yeah, Carla.
He actually was. He was.
Eric Earl was there. I thought he wasn't.
He was.
I have the article.
It says he was not attending AA meetings voluntarily. A succession of judges and parole officers had ordered him to go as an alternative to jail.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So. See, I thought the thing was that they ordered him to go to something. I didn't know if it was.
Well,
but either way, that was still like. He was obviously a not well man that probably his biggest problem wasn't alcoholism.
Right.
But when her family, they tried to sue his sponsor, her sponsor, Alcoholics Anonymous, and unsuccessfully, but that's, those things come up one case at a time.
Right.
And, it's unfortunate that and it's the only thing that keeps organizations like AA to be able to continue is having to distance themselves from personal liability, but it doesn't help a family. No. It doesn't help a family to not be able to even to affect some kind of change. Like if I were, a family member, I can imagine at least wanted them to, admit that maybe there could be something that could be done in the future to add some protection. But, I can't say that I would know what that is.
Well, it's especially galling to me that AA does not take a more public-facing stance on this, considering that they advocated for being the alternative to incarceration. I mean, at an organizational level, they approached the courts. It wasn't the other way around.
Oh, really?
So they had. This is like a problem of their own making. So it strains my compassion level to see how they can step away from it and claim no responsibility when they were the ones that tried to get themselves put in this situation in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a case of, maybe it's a good time for them to set some ground rules for what is a sponsor. What do we accept as someone who we will allow to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll be a sponsor. Maybe
right.
That's an easy fix. It could be that if they did that, that's like a form of admission of wrongdoing, and maybe that's the problem. But I think that could go a long way.
It puts certain people I guess it would put them in, like, you could do that. And I know some groups that do. They have certain people they consider to be quote-unquote qualified sponsors, and they're people that maybe attended workshops put on by their area or their group. But if you do that, then what you're doing is you're almost, even if you can't legally do it, you're almost certifying that this person is safe.
Yeah.
So, there's always that double edge of, I wouldn't be the one, I wouldn't want to be the one that's like, yeah, I vote this person is safe, and then they're not. It's such a hard, it's such a hard place to be, but I do agree. I wish there was just a little bit better of some kind of assurance that there are certain people maybe you can trust a little more than others. I just don't know what that would be.
Yeah, and I think it would attract more people because it would like make people feel a little safer that it's not just the inmates running the asylum. Most groups that I was in, the bottom line was you have to have a year. And then you're taking someone's word, that they showed up for a year and that they're sober.
How do you know they really have a year?
Yeah,
because this guy who killed this Carlo, this Earl fellow, claimed that he had all kinds of time, and meanwhile, after every meeting, he was going out and buying bottles of vodka and drinking like he was a total sociopath.
We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, though.
It depends on how clean the baby is.
Erin and I both have had great experiences. I know plenty of people. I know more people that had good experiences with sponsors than didn't. You're always going to hear, but. Maybe it's just one of those things that, it's the elephant in the room of a family, like if you have a family problem that no one wants to talk about, the only way to really make it better or take something that's really could be great and super helpful and maybe even necessary and to make it a little safer and take a little responsibility for, who's sort of, leading your brand, so to speak.
Yeah, so why aren't they doing it?
Right.
I mean, Erin, you just sent me the safety card for AA groups, which is interesting. The GSO, I guess, put out what they call an optional safety statement available.
That was hotly contested.
Well,
getting that approved.
It's so mealy mouthed that it seems like something that was written in committee.
Read it, Mike. What does it say?
It's pretty.
It was written in committee. There's nothing that isn't written in committee, and even
really
that
long.
pamphlet, the sponsorship pamphlet or the safety card, which can or cannot be. You can read it at the beginning of meetings. There's a particular part of it that was of particular interest to me when it came out, and it was the part where we had local groups that certain people would even commit crimes within the building. And they would, old timers would say, oh, traditions, we don't get involved. Well, we do when it involves an actual crime. And that safety card, the one thing it did was encourage groups that, no, if someone commits a crime, you call the cops.
Right. It's not against any tradition.
That's what you do.
That's right.
But do you know how many, there are so many people that will not acknowledge this piece of literature exists, and they voted against it until they were put in the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
I wonder, it always makes you wonder who those people, I wonder why.
Smart Recovery, which is, it's another recovery group. It's a little more, they try and be more science-based. I think I wonder in those kinds of groups, there has to be a leader who's like a facilitator who's trained and certified by Smart Recovery. Maybe that. The problem is, AA isn't set up to do things like that. They're not supposed to, it's part of the traditions. I don't know if they could do that, but maybe that's a safe alternative.
They could do that
if they had a certified facilitator.
I mean, the program does not have to be suspended in amber the same way it was since 1932.
Well, it is. I mean, they won't change
it. Depends on who you ask.
I mean, you can, I mean, call me crazy, but I don't think that the final word on addiction was written in 1932 by a drunk stockbroker and his friend.
Right. And 100 other.
I mean,
now, is Smart Recovery a nonprofit? It could be why. I don't know if they are or they aren't, but I wonder if that's part of why they're able to even, as they have a certain financial interest in. I'm not sure how they're set up as an organization as compared to AA, but I imagine they're not running their entire organization based on a set of traditions.
No.
And it may be why they have a little more, have taken a little more approach to training and being personally liable for that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and it's one of those things that they couldn't or didn't predict that it would ever grow to a point where this would be necessary. I think in a lot of ways, kind of like this podcast, we never thought we'd grow to the point where we would actually have to watch what we're saying, but it's like when something grows kind of out of where you imagined it, it brings up all of these kind of issues that are hard to retroactively to fix. But I feel like there's a lot to be saved, and and it could really make it a better scenario. Really, what we want to do is just make people aware. To be careful and proceed with caution, but proceed with, enthusiasm too. I don't ever want to, knock the wind out of someone who's looking to go to AA or get into recovery, and that's not my, my
and I never want to be part of, I never want to be part of an organization that I can't be critical of, and maybe, how publicly or how would, whatever is up for debate. But when it comes down to it, I know that it works for me. I know that it works for countless others. I also know that it could be made safer. I believe that wholeheartedly, that it could be made safer. And I feel some responsibility, even if it's just on a local level, to be part of that.
And maybe that's something that we can be a part of. We're going to wrap it up. I want to thank Erin.
You want to thank Erin for coming on? She has a website, fallingphoenix.org. Is that what? Did I get it right?
.com.
Damn it. fallingphoenix.com.
Okay.
She's also, if you want to talk about this stuff and learn from, Erin's experience, she's a moderator on the private Facebook group. It's getting very cool on there. People are starting to like.
It is.
People are talking.
It's so exciting.
We're not just talking to each other. I love it.
Yeah, sign up.
And I'll put the safety card up there. I'll put
Great idea.
The pamphlet about sponsorship and some various other things on there. But let's talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin, for coming on again. Hopefully we'll have you on again in 3 more episodes. We've been sort of regular with it. We got screwed up this summer, but thank you again, Erin. We love you, and we will see you on the boards.
Enjoy the rest of your lovely
y'all.
day.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.
Cool.
Okay.
And we'll be right back after these words.
And now we're back.
That was so great. So happy to hear from Erin again, especially because I was very insecure about today's show. I had done a whole outline about something else. And then it just sort of didn't evolve that way. So we'll save that for next week.
I enjoyed it. I can sit here and trash AA for hours.
And I'm defending AA. It turned out that I'm the defender, because I know there's so much good that comes out of it. So many people get sober. You've been a little more jaded about
15
it.
out of 100 at least.
Well, I think there's a lot of our listeners out there that have had good experiences. And if you're a monster out there listening and you have a good or bad experience with your sponsor or AA, please go to our Facebook page and join the group. Just click on groups, look for Recovery in the Middle Ages. It's a private group. You have to apply to get in and ask you a couple questions, and we're all on there.
They're really easy questions.
Yeah, you want to talk?
No heavy lifting. Yeah, we're always there. And through the night, even. If you're in England,
Grant B, G Money Smooth is on there, and Jeff D will make an appearance. Who did these awesome shirts for us? So come say hello, check it out, and with that, it's time for
Recovery in the News.
Recovery in the News. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news, motherfucker.
You've been doing that now for, I don't know, 6 months or so.
I nail it the same every time, I think.
Every time, and every time I crack up because it's very funny the way you folks should see him do it. It's even better. Yeah. We got to film it one week.
Put it on our YouTube. Yeah, get us on YouTube. We need some subscribers. So that's Recovery in the News.
No, that's not. We're not there yet.
No, this is
Recovery in the News. So I don't know how many of you guys are on the Facebook group, but if you are, you know that Grant, G Money Smooth, has a new service out there where he aggregates all of the interesting stories about recovery and addiction that come across his radar in a week, and he puts them together in a email blast. I think he has a website too, right?
Yes.
I'm going to drop a link in the show notes since I was not prepared to give the plug, even though I intended to do it. Do you have it?
I don't have it, but we will post it and announce it next time.
Okay. Anyway, so,
it's a great resource.
Every week I go through there, and usually I can find something appropriate for Recovery in the News. Like this week, there was a little note in there. It's a New York Post article that said, titled, Doc Gooden wanted the stuff that killed Len Bias during the depths of drug addiction. It's from the
New York Post.
Reliable source, the New York Post.
Yeah, wow.
The Post tends to get it right on sports-related stories.
That's about it, yeah.
And I picked this article this week because, Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden were on the New York Mets during their storied 1986 season when they won the World Series against the Boston Red Sox. And that also happened to be right about the same time that I was starting to get into the depths of my crack addiction.
Oh, parallel experience to Doc Gooden?
With a lot less money. Doc wasn't going through couch cushions looking for quarters for small rocks, but or searching the carpet for hours on end. But I remember the sixth game of the World Series that year where, the Mookie Wilson hit the blooper through Buckner's legs at the first baseline and 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, and then the Mets scored. I
think I was in a crib when that was going.
Well, I was at a bar called The Lantern up in the Fordham University area, and everybody in there, it seemed like, was Irish from Boston. Family was from Boston. Wow. So they were yelling all night, pouring beer. I mean, you loser, And then that happened, and I just, it was great. And I'm not even into sports, but I had a great moment then. So what we did was we grabbed a bottle of bourbon, piled into a car, and drove to Shea Stadium to party in the parking lot with the Mets fans that were leaving. Nice. So anyway,
wow.
So apparently Doc Gooden and his buddy Darryl Strawberry got into all kinds of trouble.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if any of you remember the 80s, but I think in 19, well, most of you probably, because in June of 1986, there was a former University of Maryland basketball player, Len Bias, who had just signed a deal for the Celtics, who got some cocaine, did one line, and then dropped dead. And it was a huge story at the time.
Is that possible?
It is. There's a certain subset group of people who, if they have, it's a genetic predisposition or something, and the first time they do cocaine, it gives them a heart arrhythmia and it kills them.
Jesus.
And that's what happened to this kid. And so he was sort of the poster child for the just say no, Nancy Reagan thing. But apparently, Doc Doc Gooden had a different reaction to Len Bias's untimely demise.
Where can I get that shit?
Right. Doc Gooden's drug troubles with the Mets got so bad that he once asked his dealer for the stuff that killed former college basketball star Len Bias.
Jesus.
The 1985 Cy Young Award winner revealed that while detailing his drug use again in the upcoming ESPN 30 for 30 documentary about the 86 Mets, titled Once Upon a Time in Queens, he said, "I remember when Len Bias died. You see that, and for like the first 4 or 5 hours, it hits you. Wow, that could have been me," Gooden says in the final episode of the 4-part series. But then the sickest part about it is you go to your dealer and say, "Give me that Len Bias stuff." That's sick, but that's where I was at that time. I would say, "Hey, I want the Len Bias stuff," meaning in street terms, I want the strongest stuff you have. That's how crazy my brain was at the time. Can you imagine? Give me the Len Bias stuff. So you're going to die, your family and friends are left, and my dad saying my son died of a drug overdose. Gooden then tears up following a lengthy pause before the camera fades out and the story turns back to the 86 season. So Gooden and Strawberry were subjects of a 30 for 30 documentary in 2016 entitled Doc and Daryl, which chronicled their issues with substance abuse on the 86 Mets. I mean, that whole team was swimming in cocaine.
Yeah, they were bad. I mean, I've heard of that in heroin. Like, if someone dies of an overdose, like when I was in it and you'd hear about someone ODing, I would always hear another addict go, "Oh, we got to get that stuff." You know, sorry, that was my phone.
That's cool. But yeah, I guess, you know, he and Strawberry had difficult childhoods growing up, and you know, there was definitely some trauma there. But you know, I just remember that whole thing with the 86 team. They were just well known for their carousing around Manhattan.
I don't know how
Lenny Dykstra was on that team. Gary Carter, you know.
Lenny Dykstra was on Dopey, man.
Was he?
And he just sounded wasted.
Yeah, he was selling used cars in Florida for a while or something, you know.
That's where this can go, man. Like, it doesn't matter how successful you are. You can spend it all and more.
Yep.
You can still destroy your life.
I mean, when you think about the kind of career that Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry could have had versus the ones that they had. And they had, you know, fairly decent careers, at least in the early days, but then they all ended up they both ended up on the Yankees in the 90s, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about how talented they must have really been to have been able to succeed to the level they did. I mean, like, doing life while you're in active addiction, whether it's alcohol or booze or drugs, it's like doing life with your hands tied behind your back. It's like trying to, you know, work basically with your feet to drive. Like, it's very, very difficult. So the level that they must have been at to even at doing all of that shit and still, you know, so like,
speaks to the level of talent they had and what they could have been.
You know, it sucks. It sucks.
Who's that guy in on the Mets who David Wells pitched that no hitter?
Yep.
Or it was a perfect game, in fact. And then they interviewed him about it a couple of weeks later. He was like, "I was still drunk from the night before." Yeah. You know.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And then his career kind of never went anywhere after that either.
And he was a mess. So that was Recovery in the News. Recovery in the News. Now it's time for
The Week in Weird.
Week in Weird. Pair of cattle mutilation cases reported in Oregon by who? Tim Banal.
Thank you, Tim, for providing hours of content.
I'd like to get him on the show.
In the Middle Ages.
I bet you we could get him on the show to do a very special Week in Weird with Tim Banal. Ranchers in Oregon are once again being advised to keep a close eye on their cattle following a pair of peculiar incidents this past month wherein bulls were found mysteriously mutilated.
I wonder if he had legal training before.
He must have. Yeah. He uses like aforementioned. The two separate cases are the latest in what has been a series of strange slayings in the state over the last few years. According to a local media report, the most recent downed animal was discovered on August 14th, my birthday, on a ranch in Oregon's Wheeler County. Believed to have been killed around 3 days earlier, the Black Angus bull was missing its nose, tongue, reproductive organs, ear, eye, and left cheek, as well as part of its tail. Chillingly, those pieces of the poor creature were said to have been removed by way of curiously clean cuts. Since the bull had been found more than 24 hours after its demise, authorities were unable to perform a necropsy of the animal. I guess it's like an autopsy.
Hold on.
Yep.
the left cheek.
Yeah, it's weird.
Butt cheek or face cheek?
I think it's a face cheek.
Just the left one.
Just the left. It's bizarre. Which was valued at a whopping $4,500. Oh, it's an expensive bull. To potentially glean more information about how it was killed, ranch owner Tanner Brown, who counted the creature among his 600 cattle, was understandably, here it is, bewildered by the eerie turn of events, musing that it's kind of a strange thing.
Kind of a strange thing.
And he acknowledged that he was not alone in having experienced the unsettling phenomenon. To that end, Brown's downed animal came on the heels of another incident in nearby Harney County in which another bull was killed under similar circumstances in July.
Did you know that Oregon has been particularly hard hit by the cattle mutilation phenomenon in recent years?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 cases in Wheeler County and another 5 in Harney County.
The more you dig into this cattle mutilation, the history of it and the reports and the scientific research on what happened to the animals.
Scientific research.
Yep. Doctors and scientists, analyzing these animals that were mutilated. It is very interesting. I'll say that much. And that was This Week in Weird. Well, that about does it for today.
That's it. We're done.
We had a great time. Thanks so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter. So tweet us a twat, you twit. Support your favorite show. Drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever, and join the private Facebook group. If you go to middleagesrecovery.com and you click, if you're on your phone, on the right, there's a little shopping cart button. You just kind of touch it and it brings up the page. It's all working nicely.
Buy the shirts, people. We need money.
We're going out of business here in a minute. So come to the private Facebook group. We love meeting new monsters and chopping it up.
I just want to say there are some expenses inherent with running a podcast, and we do it out of love and because we want to help people find and achieve lasting sobriety, right?
Yes.
But there are expenses, so buying the shirt would be a helpful way, or even a sticker.
It makes me feel better, too. It makes me feel like people like me.
And tell all your friends about us, please, because that's the best. Word of mouth is the best advertising.
It sure is.
Yeah.
So if you get something out of this, please share it and help grow the RMA movement. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
That's progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Be good, guys. Be safe.